Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Levitt, and I am your moderator for today's webinar entitled Starting Your Own Consultancy Using Your FDA Expertise. Some of you may remember I served as CFSAN Center Director 20 plus years ago and some other positions before that, but I've been involved with FDA for over 50 years. We have lined up for you today an all-star cast of people like yourselves who once worked at the FDA. And when they left, they decided, for whatever reason, I'd like to start my own consultancy. So we're going to tap into that expertise and try to provide you a lot of information. We will be recording this session. It will be posted on the FDA Alumni website. So you'll have that for posterity. You also, on the website, if you go to there, look at events, you'll find today's webinar, and you'll see a little write-up of each of our speakers, their background, and some of them have provided resources for you to utilize and tap into. We want this to be useful to you. This is a volunteer effort from everybody, so we're here to help you make your life and your work experience better. Over the last year, the Alumni Association, I think this is our 12th webinar of one kind or another, trying to help our recent alumni get adjusted into their private sector lives. All right, with that, we're going to go one by one to start out. I'm going to ask each speaker, we'll go alphabetically, to do two things. Number one, introduce themselves, who they are, and then quickly give what they think is their single most important message for you to take away. After that, we'll go through a series of topics and then have conclusions at the end. We're not equipped to take live Q&A, but I do have a copy of the questions people sent in. A lot of them are already covered, and if we have time, I'll try to cover some others as well. And I thank everybody for their attendance and for your participation and membership in the FDA Alumni Association. Okay, with that, our first speaker is Dennis Bashaw, who came from the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Joe, I only had 33 years at the FDA, not quite 50. But if I had one thing I would say about going out to being a consultant, you need to have a clear goal as to what your objective is. Is it income replacement? Is it part-time work? Is it just to keep your hand in and want to contribute? Because each one of those different paths engender different responsibilities, different amounts of effort and time. And that's one thing you need to think about as you look at being a consultant is where are you in your life and where do you want to be going with it? And we'll touch on that later, so I will stop now.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. And we have people on the panel who fall into both categories. People who are doing this part-time, people who are doing this full-time. So you'll be able to get both perspectives there. Thank you. Our second speaker is Ira Krefting, who's an MD, also from CDER.
Well, good morning or good afternoon to folks listening to the seminar. I retired from FDA, where I was a Deputy Director for Safety in the Division of Imaging and Radiation Medicine in CDER. I also was the supervisor of what's called the Radiation Drug Research Committee. I made the decision to to move into a consulting position as a part-time activity in retirement for me to maintain my relevance and to continue on with some of the projects from the viewpoint of industry versus the regulator. My main thrust in my consultancy is towards the development of imaging agents of one sort or another, and There's been a renaissance, particularly of the radiodiagnostic agents. So I am working with developers in those areas. Additionally, since I've had some safety experience, I can help with some of the major safety problems that have come up over the last few years with some very a la mode agents, some of which have made 60 minutes. As a general thoughts that I'd like to tell you, folks, about, I bring to my consultancy my experiences from way back when in a previous century when I was a practicing physician, and that ancient wisdom given to me by my grandmother of blessed memory and older docs of the what we call the three A's, which carries through to my current involvement. The three A's is availability, affability, and academics. You've got to be available to your clients. You got to be a friendly guy and not arrogant. And academics, you got to provide something of value, something particularly when you're working with industry and the expenses of developing new drugs. You have to show them how you're relevant and how you're helping them with the regulatory process. All these folks despite their credentials, don't understand the FDA process, and you're there to guide them through. So I'll turn the podium over to my other colleagues.
Okay, thank you very much, Ira. I'll say when I first met Ira, he told me about the three A's, and I confess I was so taken by it. I've used them multiple times. Hope they're not patented. Hope I don't owe you anything. But I love the three A's: affability, availability, and academic credentials, know-how. I thought they really captured it well. Okay, next, I was delighted to meet Sereen Morgan Murray, who hails from Atlanta and from the Office of Regulatory Affairs, and is a bioresearch monitoring expert, as she said in her intro. So go ahead.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction, Joe, and thank you for everyone for joining this webinar. My name is Sereen Morgan Murray. I am the founder and principal consultant for SMM Arete GXP Consulting Services. I'm also a former BiMo, which is Bioresearch Monitoring Investigator, in which I work out of the Atlanta office between 2015 through 2021. During my tenure as a BiMo investigator, I have conducted a plethora of FDA-regulated studies related to clinical trials. So it has to do with sponsors, contract research organizations, clinical investigator sites, as well as institutional review boards, as well as GLP facilities and bioequivalent studies. Right after leaving the FDA back in 2021, my position was not to go right into consultancy, but rather to understand the system of pharmaceutical companies and biotech and to truly understand it from the inside. So my position at the time, I went and got the opportunity to work both in a clinical quality assurance position as well as a clinical compliance position directly with the pharmaceutical company. From there, I was able to understand the system from the inside. And after I got the 2 years or so experience working with the system and understand it from outside of doing the inspection and then inside to see what truly occurs, I decided to go off and start my consulting business in 2023. And since then, I have been helping sponsors, contract research organization, clinical investigator sites prepare for FDA inspections. I have reviewed their quality management systems, making sure the adequacy and to examine if the system has any gaps. Also, I have worked with various companies, providing them with FDA training so they could understand the FDA inspectional approach and how FDA conduct their inspection. One of the most important things as I learned as a consultant as well and going into consulting, I believe that or FDA experience truly opens door for us. It's incredible experience and foundation that we have. But what truly matters is how we transition our knowledge into this type of space, and having the knowledge of a business. And also important for us to build relationship, not outside of the agency, but also within, because these are the set of people that you'll be working with when you transition outside of the agency. So I always say it's important to start building relationship, attending seminars with and signing up with FDA Alumni Association and other associations, so you can start building working relationships with these industry people. And final, as I mentioned, I am also an author of Beyond the Badge, an ex-FDA consulting playbook, which focus on FDA inspection mindset and transition from FDA services into consulting. And one of the key takeaways that I would like to say is that the badge may open the first door, but what you build after you leave the agency is also important as you transition into consulting.
Thank you very much. A couple of points just to re-emphasize there. Number one, Sereen worked at FDA for, by comparison, only 6 years. So you don't have to be a lifer to open a consultancy. You can work there a relatively short time and still utilize your expertise. Second, she mentioned something about relationships. I also worked in private practice after I left FDA for a long time. And I learned either the hard way or the long way that it's the relationships you build that really matter. Your resume is nice, but you know what? Lots of people have good resumes. It is about developing personal relationships with people. And that is something that I would reemphasize. Okay, good. Next speaker is Tara Rabin. Tara comes from the FDA Office of the Commissioner, Office of External Affairs, Media Relations, and now has her own. She also, I think Serena's full-time, right?
Yes, I'm full-time.
And Tara is also full-time. Tara, take it away.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks to everyone who's joined this discussion today. Tara Rabin. As Joe mentioned, I was in the Office of the Commissioner. Specifically, I was Media Relations Director and a Public Affairs Supervisor in the Office of External Affairs for over a decade. And I focused on a number of different issues as a spokesperson and conduit to the public. Being in the commissioner's office, we needed to really be his or her eyes, ears, and oftentimes mouth as well. And so really versed in issues ranging from drugs, devices, biologics, but also dabbled in tobacco prevention issues and of course, the Human Foods Program, formerly CFSAN. So really grateful for all the experiences that FDA gave to me through this time. And unfortunately, in April 2025, the Office of Media Affairs, which was the sub-office I was in, was impacted heavily by the reduction in force efforts. So for those on the line who are riffers, I guess, I'm here for you. I'm one of you and experienced it as well. So it's been a really tumultuous but also amazing year of learning and growth. So after being riffed, I in fairly short order started taking on consulting opportunities that were arising, and a year plus into it, I've now started a boutique consultancy called Tagline Strategies, where I consult on regulatory policy, public affairs, communications for the life sciences, food industry, and really any organization who is like-minded in the mission to protect and promote public health. It's, like I said, been a really, really amazing and bittersweet year in a lot of ways. FDA holds a really special place in my heart, as I believe many others on the line feel the same way too. It's definitely a unique organization to come out of. And I'd say one of the biggest things that I've really realized in the last year is that your FDA experience is your product, right? You don't need to really, people go thinking about going into consulting, or I have to reinvent myself. I have to be attractive to a pharma company or a food, supplier. But really what it is you're coming from FDA, you're unique, and that is what your vantage point is. So you don't need to reinvent yourself per se. It's just that you need to translate yourself to the general public. You need to translate what you did at FDA and that amazing expertise that you could bring to the table for private industry clients. So I'm grateful to be here today and looking forward to an engaging discussion.
Thank you, Tara. I love the phrase translate what you did to the client. Because again, when I was in private practice, that was a major goal. And it's also translating, as somebody else I think said, Dennis said, translating the FDA to the clients. I guarantee you, everybody on this call, individually, not even individually, knows more than 99% of the people in private industry about the FDA. Just by having worked there, your knowledge about how the agency works is broader than you think. Okay, our final speaker here is Steve Silverman. Before I let him talk, I'm going to brag a minute about him, which is Steve is a board member of the FDA Alumni Association, very, very active with us, chairs the membership committee, and is always somebody willing to step up and help out. So Steve, take it away.
Thanks very much for that kind introduction, Joe. So I'm Steve Silverman, and I am the person that is standing between the entire audience and the heart of this webinar. And so I'm going to play against type and try to keep my comments very brief. So I run the Silverman Group, which is a consultancy that focuses predominantly on medical product issues, and then within that environment, predominantly on devices. I tend to operate mostly in the post-market space, which draws on my FDA experience, where, among other things, I ran the Office of Compliance in the Device Center for roughly 5.5 years. And my responsibilities in that regard can help firms deal with post-market regulatory events that range from warning letters and adverse inspections and how best to handle them, to recall events, to adverse event reporting. I would say that throughout those rules, the focus is twofold. First, dealing with the immediate regulatory concerns, and second, thinking strategically about the relationship between the client and the regulator. So I would go so far as to say creating a good relationship with FDA, because I think that may be unrealistic, but at least a positive relationship that reflects clear understanding of agency expectations. And in terms of the watchwords for people who are participating in this webinar, my watchwords would be accept the unexpected, which is simply to say consulting, while I think it's a fantastic environment, is dynamic and in many respects difficult to pin down. There are unexpected events, and that's okay. And it doesn't require a particular personality type, predisposition, or type of consulting practice to manage those events. They simply need to be identified and addressed as they come up.
Okay, Steve, thank you very much. Okay, let's proceed then into the body. What we're going to do for our agenda is we're going to go through a series of administrative issues, and then we're going to go through a series of marketing issues, and then we'll go through some lessons learned and wrap up. Let us start on the administrative issues, and I'll give you kind of a long list and people will select from these. But we're going to be talking about selecting your name, creating an LLC, professional liability insurance, getting your client agreements, your non-disclosure agreements, tools for invoicing clients, that's important, separate bank accounts, and LinkedIn or website related issues. So Dennis, why don't you start, pick a few out of those, and then Sereen and others will pick up.
Yeah. I think that you really want to, you made that decision. You decide you want to be a consultant and you think you know what you want to do, and now you're going on picking a name. You can spend a lot of time, companies spend lots of money picking names. Go simple. You want to get out your basically is your name, it's yourself. That's what you're marketing it. Really fancy names are really too much. I think you want to be targeted, because I'll be honest, the very first client I got came from a referral from someone that I worked with on the opposite side. He was a sponsor 25 years prior to my leaving the FDA. He remembered me. He saw that I was out, found my name because he's looking under the name of Bash. There it was. And that was my first client. And again, those kinds of connections you make. So I think you want to keep it simple and to point. You need
Excuse me,
to really
as
think
an
about.
aside, I do leadership coaching in my which is a variation of consultancy, and mine is Joe Levitt Coaching and Consulting. So
Yeah.
they figure out pretty quickly who's and I experiment with a lot of names. As you know what, just tell them who you are.
Right. And my case is easy. Bashaw is an uncommon name. So I mean, I think there's a town up in Alberta, Canada named Bashaw, and that's about it. So it's pretty straightforward. But you got the name. You really need to think about protecting yourself, however, because I think it's important to have professional liability insurance because this is the United States. People will sue for anything. I've never been sued, but I think you need to have some professionalism about it. I will say that it's not as easy as you might think it would be. If you search for professional liability insurance, the big companies will come up there, but it really also depends on what state you live in because your state insurance commissioner regulates those things as well. I had a bit of a challenge finding, I did eventually find professional liability insurance, but it's something you need to think about earlier. You don't want to do naked consulting when you're out there without some protection. So you do need to think about it, especially because you are looking at big issues and companies will do that. The other
Dennis, I
thing,
just wanted to pop in there too
sure.
and note that I may be one of the few on this panel. I don't have an MD after my name. My profession is communications, public affairs, and so that my credentials being in the FDA, having the degrees in comms and public affairs and policy. So for those policy-minded comms folks, like this is very important because a lot of the work we do is very subjective, and it's based on like our experiences at the FDA. I didn't realize how important professional liability insurance was right after leaving the agency, but it is worth the money. It covers, we have to make gut decisions and provide advice to folks based on our experiences. And there's like really, it's very hard to cover yourself for that. This isn't a math equation, right? Sometimes you might not sometimes, you will get it wrong sometimes. There will be occasions where you can't predict the future. And this is like, the insurance makes me feel a whole lot world better when I'm doing my job day in and day out. So just for those non-MDers on the phone, really, really important.
Well, that's true because when we were at the FDA, we were covered by being a government employee. As long as we were within our span of control, we were fine. I will say this in general. In my case, I have the standard $1 million policy. It runs a little bit over $1,000 a year, but I view it's $1,000 a peace of mind because you do have that. And some companies in their agreements will say you have to maintain a professional liability policy. So you need to look at that aspect. Only other thing I want to speak on here, let some other people talk, is you do need to get a business banking account because you do need to keep your funds separate. Because when you do your taxes and your your quarterly taxes, it makes it a lot easier if that's separated out. And also having a business bank account gives you some other options too for spending and such. But it's not hard to set up. It just you need to take a little bit of prep time before you jump into it, making sure you got your business license, you got your LLC set up, such that you because they're going to ask you, companies are going to ask you for it. They're going to ask you for your numbers and things, and you need to present that professional. Yes, I'm a professional. I have taken these steps. I have these things available. Now I'll be quiet because I talk too much.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis. But the last point is a lot of this is also presenting yourselves, the clients, as a professional and not as a hobby.
Yeah.
Serene, you had a number of things you wanted to address here.
Sure, sure. And similar to what Dennis mentioned, right? I've always looked and on the, you're at this phase now and you're ready to have a structure. And it's important for you to have a formalized structure. And that means that having the name selected and also the structure, because there's multiple structure that is available for you. And as Dennis said, you don't want to overcomplicate it at its initial starts. It gets burdensome. Is a lot that you're going to step out to your comfort zone to do. So having a simplified structure, which I did at the start of my forming my company, I have just a simple LLC, limited liability. However, as you position and as you grow your consulting business, then you have later on that you could go into like S corp, partnerships, and different type of structure that you will have a tax advisor to help you navigate these different areas that you could eventually change over time. So to be simplified, I'll always say just go with something that's simple, you know, where it's easy to just start off having that
Yeah, Sereen is breaking up for a minute, so I'm going
structure
to
in
talk for a
place,
minute.
separate account structure, and having upfront, yes, just having tax advisor and personnel to help you walk you through this process is important. Is minding the business that eventually will take care of you is important.
And again, LLC stands for Limited Liability Corporation. It's the most common tool that people use. And part of the concept is it separates the business funds from your personal funds. So in addition to your liability insurance, that's another way to shield yourself and keep this as a separate enterprise. There are lawyers who will do it for you. There are companies that will do it all the time for you. But it's something you definitely should look into. I'm sorry, Serene, you were breaking in
Sure.
and out, so I wanted to give you a break. Are there other points here you wanted to address?
Sure, and especially if you're at a point where you're working global, because as I'm in the global space where I'm conducting consulting both here in the U.S. as well as globally. What you find that companies overseas ask you for in terms of liability insurance tends to be differences that what you already have. So sometimes you find that overseas company will ask for a little bit more in terms of errors and omission, different from just a regular general liability. So be prepared to also have your policies changes or added more policy as you go along and as you continue to advise on a global platform. And that's where I find myself because I'm globally consulting, not here in the US. I tend to have a little bit more of insurances that based on Italy, based on Spain, based on different country specific, I tend to have more.
And
Okay,
it's
thank
also
you.
important, all of these things are business expenses, which you can do with your taxes. That's where you need to have a good tax advisor. Especially when you first start up your business, you have a lot of expenses. You may want a newer laptop, you may need something else, you know. Those are the kinds of things you need to make sure that you track them. And having someone to advise on tax options, or at least an accountant to help you with it initially, you may be able to do it yourself later on, is very important as well as you get started.
Sure.
Excellent point. The business expenses is the one thing you feel good about when you're spending the money. Put it in a folder, business expense. Next spring, you find that your business expenses offset some of your income and you pay less on taxes. Ira, you had wanted to talk about LinkedIn and our website, as well as client agreements, non-disclosure.
Well, there's a lot to say there. Let's first talk about LinkedIn. Uh, I think all of you know that that's sort of like a semi-professional Facebook type thing. Everybody seems to be on it. The most important advice I think I can give you is that uh, don't spend money to get the premium LinkedIn because everybody's there already. Going back to the discussion about how you develop your clients, some clients will find you on LinkedIn, but these are not really the strongest ongoing clients. It's usually for a one-up type session. It's international sort of referral companies where they they will contact you via LinkedIn and say, I have one of our clients who wants to hear about the FDA process. So those might be 1 or 2 hour discussions at times, but I have not found that the strongest ongoing consultative jobs come out of LinkedIn.
Right. And Ira, if I can jump in there, I would reinforce that. The biggest value of LinkedIn is you develop a profile with your key information, and people do use it to go check you out.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's true because you find, why did they find you? Because of that profile. It says FDA, it says pharmaceutical, all of the buzzwords. And it's been pointed out since everybody can be on LinkedIn for any given job. There are thousands of people that will click the button, apply for it, and then when your LinkedIn profile comes up, it's AI or some computer deal that will sort you out by those buzzwords. So make sure, as you just heard from Joe, that you have a general good profile there. The buzzwords are there. Yeah, and you will pick up occasional work in your area, but at least from my experience, and my colleagues are here, nothing that is really super long lasting. So don't spend money on it. Now, talking about websites, spend money on it maybe. There's a variety of things you can do with the websites. So websites is your advertisement. It's everything you might have heard from Joe and some of the other folks. There you put your credentials. There you put what I want to do. There you put your availability. The starting out, as you heard from Dennis, some other people that have a lot of expenses to start off with. There are some basic websites, GoDaddy, etc., that you can sort of set up on your own. Certainly, everybody has a brother-in-law or a teenage kid that can make it look very, very nice. And those are very, very basic. If you want something a little stronger that really has certain aspects to it, you can click on it and get your CV. You can click on it and get publications, etc. Those are set up by a variety of companies. There are multiple companies available in the greater Washington, D.C. area. There's some national firms. And in dealing with them, the important things to keep in mind is what is the upfront expense? What are you going to do to make my website look unique and sell me? What access do I have to your professional library of pictures, and in my case, medical pictures, imaging pictures that are fully legally allowed to be for public use, and also, will you provide me with emails, an email that is directly linked to the site? So instead of Ira Krefting at Yahoo or Gmail, which doesn't look all that sexy. And again, you heard from my friends that you want to have that professional look to you. So you'll have Ira Krefting at kreftingconsulting.com, which is very specific and impresses the clients, and also gives you a separate email from your family or other folks or social interactions. Then you want to also from these companies find out how much is it going to cost me to set it up. And are there ongoing costs, or are there ongoing costs for the so-called protection from hackers, etc.? So you're talking something of maybe in the $1,000 to $3,000 range, but I would suggest maybe when you start going, you can try some of the free ones, some of the ways that Google can help you set up initial. But once you're really into it, and you want to sell yourself, you want to show your products, you want to show what what you've done previously, you need to move on to some of the more professional made products. Watch the prices, watch the ongoing prices, watch what the contract says, and whether if you're finished with a company, you'll have that site and you can move it to another provider. So keep it all in mind.
If I can jump in, an economy move, if you find that the website is more than you care to spend at the moment, and kind of entry level thing, which is what I did, is to develop a one-page flyer with the critical information and post it on your LinkedIn site. And then you can refer people to that if you don't want to go through the whole website. Okay, Ira, we're gonna have to move on to the next section.
Okay, move on.
Thank you. I'll call the administrative stuff the things you need to know. Now we're gonna go to what you want to know, which is how do you market yourself and how do you position yourself in the market? How do you brand yourself? How do you use your network? Things like that. Got to start with Steve Silverman. Take it away.
Sure. In listening to the discussions of the administrative necessities that my colleagues were provided, I agree with the sentiment that they are necessary, and there's value in understanding what some of them are and what some of the best strategies are for resolving them. I think at this point, it's interesting to turn to the larger topic of who's in the audience, what people may be considering. And what I mean by that is the whole idea behind this webinar is that consulting is a realistic option for a variety of people. So I come to this as more of a generalist based on the things that I did at FDA, my professional training, but also my co-panelists, I think is a very good example, have extreme valuable expertise in very specific areas, all of which is to say there are no prerequisites that someone has to be a generalist or a deep specialist in the consulting space. There is room for both. The push is to reflect upon our individual areas of expertise and use that to lead marketing efforts. And so in my case, for example, I think that there was early recognition that my value proposition was going to be speaking at an informed, but a relatively high level across a range of FDA regulatory issues, mostly in the medical product space. If you look at Dennis or Ira or others, you'll see very, very, very deep specific expertise in specific areas, which is great. And I would say in those circumstances, there's equal value in knowing like this is where my value proposition is. And the marketing comes in terms of recognizing and leaning into that professional expertise and use that as a primary tool to reach out to communities of individuals who may be interested in working with you.
Thank you, Steve. Now talk about using your network. When I went out, I was told, Joe, your marketing strategy is your network. They're the ones that already know you. How do you use your network to build a book of business?
Again, I think there are a couple of things that I want to reflect on, right? Which in answering this question, one of which is just a story that I really, really like telling. So after I left FDA, I went to work for a large international consultancy, and then I went to work for a leading medical device trade association, all of which is to say, I knew a lot of people. My Rolodex was fairly well populated. And I can count on a single hand with digits left over the number of times that those relationships have led to paid client engagements, right? I'm delighted to have these relationships and I like maintaining them and I've benefited from them, but people do not give paid client service opportunities based on who you know. So what does that mean? Well, I don't think that there's a prerequisite type of network. If there are networks that consist of lots of people, I think, which is true of mine, where I'm able to have meaningful conversations with those individuals that I can reach out to for insights, great. If people have different personality types and their style is to develop more limited networks, but deeper with individuals where the connections are much more long lasting and go deep, that's also fine. And then the last thing that I'll say so that I don't monopolize conversation is that there is value, right, in asking questions and listening to people to hear what their perspectives are. If I can talk with people who do work similar to what I'm doing and I can learn from them, great, I'm happy to ask questions. If there are other people who may not be doing similar work, but they know something that's relevant to what I do, then using those questions to define conversations is really valuable.
I would also say another important part of your network, even if they don't hire you, is referrals.
Yeah.
People you know will refer.
Yeah.
Tara want to talk about network too, and then I'm going to come back to Sereen.
Sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The network could be your network, our networks, as FDA alumni is really, I mean, everyone I engage with is just so impressive. So it's hard to say that the networking aspect of what you have to do as a consultant is necessarily to get signed contracts. Maybe it will happen sometimes with referrals or otherwise, but I think for me and others maybe in the space where you're dealing with the public domain, the networking is really important to keep your expertise alive. So at FDA, I was engaging with national reporters more than I care to every single day. But and then you go to the outside and some reporters are still calling, but definitely not the same frequency as we were getting on the inside. And so how do you keep that network alive? Because that is a core offering, right? That I have this strong media network that reporters might want to come to me because they see some commentary on LinkedIn that would help with their story. And in turn, I could provide that connection to my client to maybe get them in the news. Same thing when you're talking about work on the Hill. You really want to, it's a way to facilitate connections that allow you to do your job. And so it's not always, I'm going to get a signed contract, I'm going to get a paid business, out of a LinkedIn post. It's about maintaining your credibility and your ability to deliver on what you do once you're not sitting inside White Oak or other parts, other offices of the FDA. And, so that's a big reason why I'm engaged in LinkedIn. I mean, I definitely have had the experiences where one thing has led to a referral or another, and that's been great. But the vast majority of experiences I've had have been learning, sharing my thoughts, getting the camaraderie that a lot of us as former, FDAers feel we need, especially in the past year. That's been huge for me. And then, frankly, as my consultancy has grown, I've been tapping into the FDA network to get help. There is no reason consultants can't band together, especially FDA-minded consultants, to provide a really great service to a client. And I've been very lucky to have a few folks, former FDAers come in and build that expertise. So I'd say the last thing about marketing and positioning and LinkedIn and stuff is you're not in the building anymore. You're not sitting at the table anymore. And that's my way to stay fresh and unique. Major media is covering the big stories, but LinkedIn has the little juicy tidbits. And that's an important part of being a consultant as well. So don't discount LinkedIn. I agree with Ira. The paid version is not useful. I'd rather put my money towards building a website, but definitely an amazing tool. And On top of LinkedIn, I'd say conferences, getting out there, networking. If you're in the DC area or Boston or any of these like hubs, like go to the conferences, even if it's not, like I said, I'm not an MD, but I'll go to these conferences. I'll shake hands. I'll meet people who maybe are clients, but maybe just help extend my ability to talk about different industries and understand the challenges that they're going through. And so don't discount those conferences. They are good networking, but also keeping you fresh on the issues, opportunities.
And one point on that I learned is that
Joe, if I might
FaceTime.
just chime in.
Yeah, go ahead, Ira.
A couple of points to build on that. I found that it was very important that I met with the people that had come to FDA with their products in meetings at the FDA. After those meetings, I've been accused of flirting with the ladies when they left, but what I was really doing was getting cards and using that for the future when I retired, and contacting those people and say I'm now available. We had some good discussions way back when, and I'm available for consultations, and here's my website, etc. And I find that builds things. And then as Tara and somebody else mentioned, that once you do one consult, the network grows, and I heard you were working with so and so, and perhaps we can also use you for something similar. The other point is there is a Google group called XFDA. I haven't heard it mentioned here, but it's very important to join that. Daniel Orr, ORR, seems to run it, and contacting him through his email can get you on there, and that seems to be a great sharing of consultative opportunities among a lot of former FDA folks. So please investigate that once you sever from the agency.
Okay, Ira, could you just repeat who runs that group?
It's called XFDA, EXFDA. Daniel Orr, ORR, seems to be the administrative guy of putting people on it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I want to turn back to Sereen on a topic that Steve touched on, but from a different angle, which is branding yourself.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. So for me, I don't consider myself as a generalist, and I only brand myself on LinkedIn. I'm a big advocate of LinkedIn because majority of my work initially came through LinkedIn, only because I found that my profile is narrowed to BiMo specific, GCP space, clinical investigator site, sponsors, contract research organizations. So when persons or LinkedIn personnel reached out to me, I'm not getting everything in my basket. Persons who reached out to me are specifically wanting to do either inspection readiness training for BiMo mock inspections. So finding myself in a more narrow profile, it gives me the opportunity to take on more lucrative position or jobs rather than communicating and having extended communication, then yet to find out this is not your area to move forward with the project. So for me, I try to narrow myself and narrow my profile where the benefits we can align based on my background, based on my profile, and we can move forward with business. As far as relationship, I find that majority of my time as well is built with relationship. Before you even, or once you consider leaving the agency, I would say reach out to personnel who are in your position or were working in your position at FDA, and you now see them as since transition outside of the FDA. I reach out to them to see how they have done it in the past, because that was something that I did right when I decided to leave the agency. I've reached out to personnel who was working as a BiMo, consumer safety officer, both at the center level and inspections. And that's where they're happy to support you and help you walk through that process. And I believe that will also gives you a good coverage and understanding of what happens outside the agency as you transition. And that also eliminates a lot of your time from doing it all by yourself. So it's important for you to navigate LinkedIn, use LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn a lot just to navigate my career outside of the agency and into this space. So it's important that I find LinkedIn to be very useful for me and my career as a consultant working in the BiMo space.
Thank you. I really want to emphasize, for those of you who have a specialty, like Sereen's BiMo, embrace it.
Yes.
Because people who want that will find you. If you're a generalist, when I went out, I was more of a generalist, and sometimes people didn't quite know what to contact me for.
Yes.
So if you are a specialist, don't run from it, embrace it. If you are a generalist, then you have to, market that also. But but shining the spotlight on that specialty can be a real boost. Okay, I'm looking at the time. I want to shift to kind of my favorite part of the program, which is lessons learned. I find when I ask people, what are your lessons learned? That I'm always gratified at what comes out. And so, Tara, I'm going to start with you. What surprised you most about the transition from the public to the private sector, and any other lessons learned?
Yeah, one of the most, I don't know, it wasn't shocking, but it was sort of like humbling in moving from FDA into the private sector is just realization of how strong the people at FDA and how experienced everyone, whatever their specialty is, really was. Like the ability to pick up the phone and call the world's foremost expert in name it, right? Because FDA regulates so much of the economy, right? But having that access and then going from it's a phone call or Teams message away to getting the world's best expert to answer your question to not having that access was one of the hardest transitions for me. And so what I would say, if doing it again, is figuring out how to rebuild that network from the outside through groups like the Alumni Association, who are all ex-FDAers and have the specialty areas. You really want to find your new SMEs, as we called them at FDA, to keep you fresh. You're not sitting at the conference room tables anymore, and you really have to make that extra effort to validate what you're doing, make sure you're up and up on the latest policy thinking. You have to pay for all your news media subscriptions. You have to read those major media, but also make the effort to get on webinars like these and hear about the little insights and the things that people talk about behind closed doors. And just the effort that goes into that is a huge part of consulting to stay relevant and make sure that you still have that FDA expertise, no matter how many years you are post agency life. So don't undervalue this.
Thank you, Tara. I've got to jump in. For our other speakers, we're on the 5-minute mark, as I have a couple of closing comments. So lessons learned, biggest lessons learned thinking quickly. Steve.
In terms of again, I'll return to the point that I made earlier, which is that for those people who are interested in consulting, I think it's a very gratifying area where there's an opportunity to engage, leverage expertise in ways that are meaningful and that benefit the regulatory ecosystem. And there is no specific template for what a successful consultant is, whether people tend to be wide or deep. There are room for both models. It's just a function of going into the process, clear-eyed, recognizing what the challenges are and meeting those challenges.
Okay, thank you. Sereen, what would you do differently if you were starting over?
So what would I do differently if I had to start over is that I would get the opportunity to do a little bit more connection outside of the agency. A lot of time, especially working in our global space as a BiMo, you tend to go on site, just do your inspection and not commingle with the outside world. However, that was a big transition for me because when I left the agency, it's about changing the mindset. I'm not now seen as an enforcement, but someone who is there to assess the risk and to work with solving the problem together with the company. So mindset is also different that I had to change because going in and leaving the agency, that type of mindset has to be transitioned. No, you're not seen as an enforcement, but someone who's seen as a partner to support them in how they fix problem and become a trusted partner to the organization.
That trusted partner is a important element.
Yes.
Because when you're at the FDA, you're really not a trusted partner to these people.
Yes.
And you have to make that shift. Dennis, you were our opener. I'm going to give you the last word before what lesson learned would you share with the group?
I think that ultimately, this is going back to my time at the FDA, what you have to realize all you really have is your name and your integrity. Many times I sat in meetings at the FDA and I saw third tier, fourth tier consultants come in who were out of their depth but wouldn't admit to it, or were saying what the company wanted them to say. As a consultant, you need to have the confidence in yourself that you can tell the sponsor, this is not the right way to go. This is not going to work. And if they don't like it, that's fine. And they can fire you. That's fine. It happens. Your contracts all have exit clauses in them. But ultimately, all you have is your integrity and you have your name. And that's what you don't want to sell. You want to be able to give them the best advice you can based on your experience because that's what you're providing. And, you don't want to fall into where you want to make sure people know you and you have such options as, branding and everything. You do have hats and so occasionally, but ultimately it's your integrity is what you have. And that's what you need to maintain and guard more than anything else.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. I want to have a couple of minutes here for wrap-up comments from me. I want to start ending where I began, which is to thank the FDA Alumni Association for allowing us to have this event and all of our 5 speakers for sharing their time and their expertise with everyone. If again, this session has been recorded, and if you go to the FDA website at FDAAA.org and go to events, you'll see the first event is here. And you will see a list of all the speakers that you've just heard. Again, a little bit about them and some resources. Steve Silverman has a nice article on consultancy where his point, well, I'm going to make it because I think it's really important. When you go to talk to clients, do not pitch your expertise and how great you are, even though you are. Pitch with your ears. Listen to what their needs are. It's like if you go into somebody and you go to a tailor and you say, make me a nice thing, and he gives you a suit and you'd wanted a shirt. Well, that was a waste of time. You will get much further. And I'll tell you, it took me a long time to learn this. Find out what they need. What they need is what you can offer. What you want to offer is actually not terribly relevant if it's not what they need. So Steve's article goes into that. Sereen has her new book from Beyond the Badge, which really both speaks to somebody who with short FDA experience, who has successfully made the transition and going from the perception of the enforcer, especially since she was in ORA, to a trusted partner. That's a whole different thing. And how to do that, somebody's done it. Dennis has a nice article up there as well. Ira's got his website. He talked about websites. It's got a beautiful website. Tara's got her LinkedIn post. You can learn more about her, what she does. But there's a lot of good information available to you. Finally, there will be a evaluation of this webinar. We appreciate feedback. And we'll use that as this series continues. I think the biggest thing in the Alumni Association over the last year and a quarter, and Tara referenced it most directly, is FDA was hit with trauma that day in April. when so many thousands of people were ripped, and the enormous outreach that the association has had from putting signage out for those that are still there, having happy hours, doing webinars like this, having mentoring programs. It has really, I think, brought the association up to a new level. So I thank all of you for being members. And with that, I see it's 1 o'clock. My wife is a school teacher. I was told the bell rings, class ends.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Bye.